Hi, my name's Mike Carroll. I'm a manager at Risk 360, and I'm also the HITRUST practice lead. And today I wanted to talk about the single framework strategy and more specifically, how HITRUST can be used to bring this strategy to life in your organization. So I wanted to lead off by talking about some of the challenges of traditional audits. And when I refer to traditional audits, really what I'm referring to is a situation where you have to comply with multiple frameworks, be that SOC 2, ISO 27001, PCI, or a similar type of framework. And you treat each of those frameworks as its own siloed type of activity. That type of situation is very inefficient. There's a lot of redundant tasks. It can be very time consuming. And overall, it just leads to a high level of audit fatigue. In contrast, what a single framework strategy allows you to do is have a single set of controls. You test them once and you apply the results of that testing across multiple frameworks. So the reason for HITRUST kind of being the golden solution to this problem is because HITRUST itself maps back to more than 40 different frameworks and regulations. So what that means is once you receive a HITRUST certification, you're able to map the results of, again, testing that single set of controls across a large number of frameworks. I do want to put a caveat at the bottom. So a HITRUST certification may demonstrate compliance across multiple frameworks, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. And I'll talk about the reason why in just a little bit, but just know that overall a HITRUST certification does map to many frameworks, significantly more than a lot of different frameworks such as ISO or SOC 2. So we'll dive into some of the details in just a second. So when we're talking about how are you going to leverage HITRUST, I wanted to give just a few steps that you can take. So the first step that you'll take is completing a scoping exercise in MyCSF. What this looks like is within the MyCSF tool, which is essentially HITRUST's GRC platform, you're going to respond to a questionnaire that has numerous questions. And depending on the way you respond to that questionnaire, HITRUST is going to produce a customized set of control requirements that are applicable to your framework. So I mentioned before that your HITRUST certification may map across multiple frameworks. That's very dependent on the output of this scoping exercise that you complete. If you have a more complex environment, or if you add different regulatory frameworks into the scope of your assessment, it's going to map much more cleanly as opposed to if you just have a very small environment with a very minimal amount of requirements. So keep that in mind as you're completing your scoping exercise. The second thing that you can leverage are what are called authoritative source report cards. So within the MyCSF tool, there is reporting functionality that's available to you. And what these report cards allow you to do is to map your customized set of requirements across, the 40 different frameworks or standards that I mentioned before. So you can see based on my customized tailor-fit control listing, which frameworks am I able to show compliance with? The nice part about this report as well is once you complete your HITRUST certification and all your testing is done, not only is the mapping made available to you, but also your level of compliance. So for instance, if you scored very strongly under access control within your HITRUST certification, you'll see how that maps to the access control sections of SOC 2 or PCI or ISO. And the last piece I wanted to talk about is that a huge benefit to leveraging HITRUST for a single framework strategy is that you're able to leverage the automated mapping updates that they have within the platform. So one of the large burdens that you'll have if you want to maintain a single framework strategy offline is that A, you have to be aware of when any of the underlying frameworks change, and B, when they do change, the onus is on you to update that mapping and make sure that it still reflects reality as the changing requirements are updated in those underlying frameworks. So again, one of the benefits here is that the HITRUST Alliance owns responsibility for maintaining this mapping. So they're actively searching for updates that are made to frameworks and making sure that that's reflected in the tool so it takes a large burden off of you. So those are just a few reasons why HITRUST could be the golden standard when it comes to leveraging a framework that allows you to use a single framework strategy.